The Cathar called for one patrol boat. Honestly, they were hoping for something discreet, a quiet little deterrent. What they got instead, the 6th Terran Expeditionary Fleet. All of it. The first pirate missile ripped through the crystalline architecture of Cathar Prime at a terrifying orbital velocity, tearing through the delicate, shimmering gardens that had taken 1,000 years to grow in what felt like a single, devastating heartbeat. The impact sent tremors through the entire floating island, a soundless scream across the planet. Elderval pressed her 4 trembling, translucent palms against the war table's edge, her photosynthetic skin paling with each distant explosion. "Dispatch the distress call," she whispered, her voice barely a rustle of leaves. Her multiple hearts fluttered erratically. "Ask for a single deterrent ship, nothing more. We must be clear. We absolutely do not wish to appear hostile, nor do we want to escalate things unnecessarily." 1,000 light-years away, on a dusty, forgotten human listening post, a bored technician tagged the plea low priority. Probably just another squabble between minor trading guilds, right? And forwarded it up the chain. Just another Tuesday. 17 hours later, the sky above Cathar Prime didn't just open. It ripped open like foil, not with a gentle hum, but with a sound that seemed to tear the very fabric of space. It was the sound of something impossibly vast arriving, all at once. Now, to understand the sheer scale of this misunderstanding, you need to know a bit about the Cathar. They're tiny, really, barely thumb-sized, and their entire existence revolves around quiet contemplation and artistic expression. Being photosynthetic, they thrive on light, not conflict. They're philosophically allergic to loud noises, to aggression, to anything that disrupts the delicate balance of their crystal ecosystems. Their homeworld? It's a breathtaking necklace of naturally formed, floating crystal islands, each a miniature biome, all orbiting a gentle, nurturing blue sun. They craft wings for graceful flight, not warships for brutal combat. Their history is one of art, philosophy, and the slow, deliberate growth of living crystal architecture. War? It's just not in their vocabulary. For 3 agonizing cycles, the Vorn pirates, a nasty, brutish collection of exiles from a dozen heavier, more belligerent species, had been a growing menace. They'd set up shop in the outer asteroid belt, a dark stain on the pristine system, and had been systematically picking off Cathar supply barges. Their demands for tribute grew ever larger, ever more brazen. The Cathar, true to their nature, had tried diplomacy, appeals to reason, even offering generous trade concessions. But the Vorn only understood one language: force. When the last Cathar patrol skimmer, a delicate, unarmed craft splintered against a Vorn rail slug, its pilot vaporized, the Council finally knew they had to act. They voted, with heavy hearts and trembling antennae, to swallow their profound pride and ping the wider galaxy for help. They encoded the call with meticulous precision, for exactly what they believed they needed. One modest warship, something just imposing enough to make the pirates think twice, a gentle nudge to send them on their way. They aimed the narrow beam signal at a spiral arm segment labeled, rather enigmatically, H. sapiens, pre-contact, tech indeterminate. They assumed it meant a fledgling species, perhaps one still finding its feet in the galactic community. They hoped for a corvette, maybe 2, if they were lucky, to show a united front. Instead, they woke something ancient, something primal, something that measured firepower not in individual ships, but in continent-cracking broadsides. They'd sent a polite request for a small dog, and the universe had delivered a pack of wolves. A lone human courier ship. The UES Theseus, a sleek dart of a vessel, slipped out of FTL at the system's edge, barely a ripple in space-time. Captain Elena Ruiz, her expression a study in professional calm, opened the standard hail. Her voice was warm, almost casual. "This is Captain Ruiz of the UES Theseus. We received a distress call from this system. Do you still require assistance?" On Cathar Prime, Val's hearts fluttered with a wave of profound relief. "One ship? Perfect!" Just as they'd hoped. The Council, collectively sighing with anticipation, broadcast back. "Gratefully, yes. Hostile elements are operating in the outer belt. Please, if you would be so kind, just demonstrate presence. A show of force, perhaps. The Vorn, however, weren't just marauders. They were opportunistic predators. They'd been listening, of course. Always listening. A particularly nasty pirate frigate, its hull scarred from countless skirmishes, rolled out to intercept the newcomer, its plasma lances glowing ominously like hot pins, eager to gut another easy mark. They saw a single ship, and they saw a prize. Ruiz, watching the Vorn frigate's aggressive maneuver on her main view screen, let out a long, weary sigh. "Not this again! Weapons! Warm the coil guns!" she ordered, her voice losing its casual warmth, replaced by a steely edge. "Comms, ping the fleet! Tell them Condition Red just got personal." The Vorn, ever confident, opened fire. 17 seconds later, the pirate frigate was no longer a ship. It was an expanding cloud of superheated scrap metal, its component parts vaporized or shredded beyond recognition. The Theseus hadn't even broken a sweat. 17 seconds after that, 100 more Vorn hulls, their bravado evaporating, lit their drives, screaming toward the tiny human courier, hoping to overwhelm it with sheer numbers. They were about to learn a very hard lesson, and somewhere deeper in the dark, responding to that Condition Red, the rest of humanity answered. And they weren't sending just another courier. Then the Cathar sky didn't just change color. It turned pure, blinding white. It was as if the very fabric of reality had been stretched thin and then snapped back, revealing something truly immense behind it. Where once there had been countless familiar stars, now shoals of impossibly vast steel structures eclipsed the sun, casting long, geometric shadows across the crystal islands. Supercarriers, each one the size of small moons, dwarfed anything the Cathar could have ever conceived. Dreadnoughts, wrapped in kilometers of ablative armor, bristled with weapons that seemed capable of carving planets. Drone swarms, each composed of millions of individual units, eclipsed entire formations like digital locusts, a terrifying, silent cloud of destruction. The 6th Terran Expeditionary Fleet, a name that would soon echo with fear and awe across the galaxy, dropped out of Alcubierre slits in perfect, terrifying parade formation. Their weapons, already warm, were tracking every single Vorn vessel with an unnerving precision. Val stared upward, her wings numb, her photosynthetic cells struggling to process the sheer, overwhelming scale of what she was witnessing. How many ships did they send? She managed to ask, her voice barely audible. Her aide, equally stunned, could only whisper, "All of them." It wasn't an exaggeration. It felt like every ship humanity possessed had just arrived. Then, human comms crackled across every frequency, broadcasting a message that was both chillingly professional and utterly devastating. The voice was calm, authoritative, leaving no room for doubt. "This is Admiral Tamayo of the 6th Terran Expeditionary Fleet. We are here to remove your pirate problem. Permanently." The Vorn hesitated for half a heartbeat, a fatal miscalculation. They scattered, their formations breaking, their drives flaring wildly in a desperate, panicked attempt to flee. It didn't help. Not one bit. Mag accelerator slugs, each the mass of an apartment block, punched through their hulls, sending them out of the sky in fiery explosions. Fighter squadrons, mere specks against the colossal human ships, zipped through debris fields like angry hornets, picking off anything that remained. A Cathar child, watching from a crystal balcony, later recounted with wide, terrified eyes that the stars themselves looked afraid. The entire engagement, from the moment the fleet arrived to the last Vorn vessel being reduced to molecular dust, lasted a mere 22 minutes. No Vorn vessel larger than an escape pod remained, and even those were likely tracked for later retrieval. Then, with an unnerving synchronized precision, the fleet turned its attention planet-side. Admiral Tamayo's shuttle, sleek and deceptively small, touched down gently on the central plaza, its thrusters scattering clouds of iridescent pollen across the polished marble. It was an almost serene landing, a stark contrast to the apocalyptic display moments before. Val, still reeling, approached, her wings folded low in a gesture of profound respect and perhaps a little fear. We asked for one ship," she managed to say, the question hanging in the air, tinged with disbelief. "Tamayo, A man whose face seemed carved from granite, but whose eyes held a hint of amusement, offered a rueful, almost apologetic shrug. Protocol, Elder. It's just how we do things. When a civilian distress flag reaches us, especially from a pre-contact species, we assume worst case. Pirates today, slavers tomorrow. We don't do half measures, not when someone calls for help. He paused, a slight smile playing on his lips. Consider it overcompensation. Behind him, an organized stream of humanity spilled out. Marines in powered armor, their movements surprisingly gentle despite their imposing size, began distributing medical kits and nutrient packs. Engineers, already setting up portable scanners, meticulously checked the crystal foundations of the Cathar structures for any seismic damage from the earlier battle. Cathar kids, who had never seen a human up close, much less one in armor, cautiously poked the gigantic boots with trembling antennae, their initial fear quickly giving way to wide-eyed curiosity. The Cathar Council, still in emergency session, broadcast their deliberations across the planet motion. Declare the day a planetary holiday in honor of our unexpected saviors. Objection. Declare a planetary day of stunned silence to fully process all of this. Both passed unanimously. It was that kind of day. Above, in the newly secured orbital space, human salvage tugs, immense and efficient, began nudging the Vorn wreckage into stable graveyard orbits. Humanity, it seemed, cleaned up after itself. Thoroughly. News, as it always does, spread faster than light. Within a single galactic rotation, every species with an FTL dish, every government, every intelligence agency, was replaying the sensor footage. They watched, spellbound and often horrified, as a fleet large enough to glass entire sectors arrived because some tiny, unassuming species had politely asked for a patrol boat. It was a watershed moment, a galactic re-evaluation. The Cathar were no longer just that quaint crystal race with their pretty gardens and philosophical treatises. Oh no, they were now the species who had unknowingly, perhaps accidentally, leashed a superpower. They were the ones who had pulled the trigger on a galaxy-altering event. Envoys from the Galactic Forum, usually a slow, bureaucratic body, practically tripped over themselves requesting an urgent conference with Admiral Tamayo. He obliged, of course, but only after ensuring Cathar orbital space retained a permanent defense picket, human this time. Not just a few ships, mind you, but a solid, unyielding presence. A clear message. Across the spiral arms, governments frantically updated their Xeno-relations files. The new entry for humanity was stark, direct, and filled with a newfound respect bordering on terror. Humans, do not provoke. Under any circumstances, if contacted for aid, consider carefully what you request. They will bring more than you ask for, and they will leave with less of your enemy than you ever expected. Be prepared for overwhelming force, delivered with brutal efficiency, even for minor incidents. They appear to have a peculiar concept of proportional response. Back on Earth, the Senate hearings were, predictably, less celebratory than the Cathar's new holiday. There was a lot of hand-wringing and political posturing. Who authorized deploying an entire fleet for what was essentially a local piracy incident involving a pre-contact species? Demanded Senator Albright, pounding his fist on the podium. Are we trying to destabilize the entire quadrant? But then Captain Ruiz's after-action report was released, a concise document that cut through all the bureaucratic noise. It contained one single powerful line that resonated with the populace, and surprisingly, even with some of the more pragmatic senators. The Cathar sounded small and scared. We responded with the force we'd want if we were small and scared. The Senate grumbled, of course, because that's what Senates do. But public opinion? Ratings soared. Enlistment numbers spiked across every branch of the Terran military. Because underneath all the politics, all the strategic concerns, the story just felt good. It tapped into something deeply human. It was about humanity, tipped off by a whisper, arriving with thunder. It was about protecting the vulnerable, even if it meant bringing a sledgehammer to a fly. And frankly, a lot of humans thought that was exactly the right response. Weeks later, Vol stood again on the plaza balcony, the air now filled with the sweet scent of new growth. Human engineers, working with surprising delicacy and advanced terraforming tech, had helped regrow the shattered crystal gardens using mineral-rich foams. The new structures pulsed with vibrant colors, singing in the sunlight, perhaps even more beautiful than before. The Cathar were slowly, cautiously, beginning to understand their new, powerful neighbors. A Marine private, a young woman with a kind smile and a rifle that looked far too large for her, approached Vol and respectfully handed her a small, elegant metal plaque. Engraved on it, in both Cathar glyphs and Terran script, were simple, clear words. In case of trouble, dial loud. We always pick up. Vol pressed her forehead to the chilled alloy, a gesture of profound gratitude. And then she laughed, an odd, fluttering sound that humans, upon hearing it, compared to the gentle chime of wind chimes. It was a sound of relief, of wonder, and perhaps a touch of newfound confidence. Her aide, still a little wary, asked, "Will we ever call them again?" Vol looked up at the sky, where a Terran destroyer now patrolled in elegant, silent arcs, a constant, reassuring presence. "Only," she said, a new strength in her voice, "if we want the stars themselves to fight for us." Humanity never asked to be the galaxy's sledgehammer, never sought to be the ultimate arbiter of interstellar disputes. We really hate bullies. We hate seeing the small and vulnerable picked on. It's a core tenet deep in our bones. The Cathar wanted a warning shot, a polite suggestion for the pirates to move along. They got an entire orchestra of railguns, plasma cannons, and enough kinetic energy to rearrange a solar system. And somewhere, in the vast, cold black between stars, every would-be pirate king, every ambitious warlord, every species contemplating preying on the weak, now knows one thing for sure: pick on the little guys, and Earth doesn't just send a delegation. Earth brings the whole damn Armada, and she brings it fast. So, if you ever find yourself in a bind and decide to send humanity a polite request for help, maybe, just maybe, add a little footnote. Something like, "Please, not the entire fleet." A squadron would be perfectly sufficient. But honestly, they'll probably still bring it. All of it, because that's just what we do. We answer the call.